ready to go for a topic that relates to a skill that has become absolutely essential in today's business world: virtual presentations. With more of our online communication and selling via online, you absolutely need to know how to effectively present in a virtual, rather, environment. Welcome to the Making Sales Social podcast, featuring the top voices in sales, marketing, and business. Join Brynne Tillman, Stan Robinson Jr., and me, Bob Woods, as we each bring you the best tips and strategies our guests are teaching their clients so you can leverage them for your own virtual and social selling. Enjoy the show. Welcome, sales and marketing pros, to Making Sales Social Live, coming to you from the Social Sales Link virtual studios. I'm Bob Woods, and I'm joined by my SSL teammates, Brynne Tillman and Stan Robinson. How y'all doing today?
Great, Bob.
Doing excellent.
Everybody is pumped and ready to go for a topic that relates to a skill has become, not is becoming, but has become absolutely essential in today's business world: virtual presentations. With more of our online communication and selling via online, you absolutely need to know how to effectively present in a virtual, rather, environment. Whether you're having a sales call or a discovery call, or whatever you want to call it, you're hosting a webinar, or you're just having a meeting to share insights, no matter what, if it's with a prospect or even with your own team, mastering visual presentations can make all the difference in building rapport, engaging your audience, and driving those all important results. Brynne, you had said earlier that you have a book that you like.
Yeah. So, in the beginning of the pandemic, when everyone went virtual, it was amazing how few people were good at Zoom. Like, they were all the way down where you could just see their eyes, like Wilson from Home Improvement, or they were way too close, right? And then Julie Hansen put out a book called Look Me in the Eye. And I think it transformed the way that salespeople specifically started to use virtual for, the Zoom for sales conversations. And as you said, many different networking conversations. And so, kind of when we were going through what are some areas that salespeople need. Now, we teach the social selling, we teach you to get to the conversation, but then people get stuck. How do I run this conversation? And of course, we've got lots of ideas around that. But today we're really going to talk about the virtual presentation piece, not necessarily the scripting piece. A lot of this is inspired by Julie Hansen. So if you are looking to get better at mastering the art of virtual presentations, we're not the people to hire. She is. So.
Absolutely. So if there's one bona fide takeaway you have, is get that book. And its title again is, Brynne?
Me in the Eye by Julie Hansen.
Julie Hansen, Hanson or En?
En.
Okay. I would have went with Owen, so I'm really glad I asked with that.
Yes, you and I were thinking the same thing. I'm picturing Hansen in my.
So let's get this rolling. I'm going to toss out some questions. I have some ideas. I'm sure y'all have some ideas as well. So number one, I think we should just get right into the biggest challenge or challenges, because I'm sure we probably all have different things people face with virtual presentations.
I'm happy to start on this one, Bob. That's okay.
Certainly. Tag, you're it.
Jump in, and I'm going to say, and a lot of this, I think we've all experienced, was just maintaining audience engagement, right? One thing, when we're doing full-on courses and presentations and trainings, even in our coaching, we really encourage people to have their video on, because when the video is off, they're most likely multitasking. They're most likely doing some other things. So, I have my one client. It's such an amazing thing. So I'm going to name drop them. Comerica Bank, everyone has their video on all the time. all the time. And unless like they step away for 30 seconds and they turn it off and come back, but I absolutely love it. And the engagement is so much higher, and the impact the training has is so much higher. So I think in a virtual setting, it's really easy for attendees to become distracted. And like when you're in person and you're physically holding your presence, right, and their attention, and you can see everything they're doing. So I think you have to be a lot more intentional with how you're delivering your content.
Yeah, and I think to that end, one thing that everyone on this call, after hearing that, because that was going to be one of my points in a later question, is make sure that other people have their video on. Whenever you are on a call, make sure your video is on as well.
Yeah,
100%. I was actually in a webinar last Thursday, and I think it was like me and only one other person who had their video on. And guess what happened? Although this was like a networking educational thing, it wasn't sales related. But guess what happened? The person who was hosting it tended to talk with the two people who are on camera more than the ones who were not. So just being totally and completely present, being on camera, I think is very important.
I love that.
Yeah. And one thing that I've found, since I tend to be low key, is on video, you have to bring your energy level up, because the video actually diminishes your energy level.
Yes.
So it's a stretch more for some of us than others, but I have to consciously think about, okay, you need more energy on the video because of how it comes across, and
love that.
many effects.
Yeah, 100%. Especially when, all of these windows, especially if you're in a heavily attended webinar, all these windows are so freaking small. You can't really feel energy from people. So, I mean, just having just energy, and we're not talking about acting like a clown or whatever, just bring energy. And that could be, maybe through just enlivening your voice a little bit. One thing that I tend to do is what I'm doing right now, actually using your hands more, because I bet you use your hands when you talk and you don't even think about it. Don't sit on your hands when you are either presenting or you're on the other end and you are an attendee. It doesn't really matter what. Bring the energy so that people can feel the energy. They can start to get to know you. And depending on the situation, who knows what could happen, but people will say, hey, I remember that person from that presentation or from that meeting or whatever.
I love that. What's our second one?
Second one is, how can presenters build rapport with their audience in a virtual environment? So I'm going to start this one really quick, and that's by engaging early and often, and especially using the tools that are available to you within these platforms. So we use Zoom mainly, so I'm going to be talking about mainly Zoom. If these are available in Microsoft Teams or whatever it is that you use, definitely use those as well. So you can start with a question or a poll, or if you want to get around that, even just a quick story that really resonates with your audience. And just make sure that you're making things truly interactive so that people feel like that they're part of the conversation and not just passive listeners. If you're up there and it's feeling just like a college professor in front of a classroom of 200 or 300 people, guess what people on the other end are going to feel like? That they're in a college classroom with 200 or 300 other people. You have to make sure that you're getting that interactivity. So questions, polls, another great thing to do, and you have to kind of schedule this out ahead of time and kind of plan ahead of time, which is something that you should be doing anyhow, but also breakout rooms. If you have a big enough audience and you want to like segment people out so that they're feeling like they're being heard, these separate rooms for engagement are also very big.
I love that. I'm going to yes and that. And I'm going to say Let's play with this right now. So engagement, even if you don't have a full-on poll, if you are live with us and you're like, man, I absolutely crush virtual presentations, put a number 1. Put a number 2 if you're like, I'm pretty good at it, but I'm looking to learn a little bit more. Or number 3, man, I am so excited to learn about virtual selling, and I'm going to go buy Julie's book, Look Me in the Eye, because I got to nail this thing. Put in number 3, right? And so now what we're doing, to Bob's point, is we're bringing in engagement. Even if you're watching this in the replay, obviously if you're listening on the podcast, you can come find it. But we have our first one came in. We have a number 2, right?
Thank you, Letty.
And by doing that, we are definitely bringing in engagement. So I love that. I'm going to throw, and I have another number. Yeah, so this is great, and I love it. And I think we're around a number 2 as well. We're gaining maybe a 2.5, hopefully. I'm going to add 3 quick things. Number 1, and this is the big message that I learned. One of the big messages I learned from Julie's book was make eye contact. But here's the problem, and this is always a challenge for me. If I'm looking down, now if you're watching us live, you'll see this. If you're listening, just picture me in the top row and I'm looking down to Bob's box because he's talking. I am now no longer making eye contact with the audience. So you have to remember, eye contact is not with the people or that have their cameras on, but it's actually with the camera. So one of the things I try to do when someone is talking is I try to bring their picture to be underneath that camera, so that when I'm looking, I can look at their picture, but they also feel like I'm looking at them. So that's 1. I think I said I'm going to say 3 things. That means I have to remember what the other 2 were. Oh, use names.
Yes.
Use their names, right? Hey, Bob, what do you think about that? Stan, what are your thoughts around this? Dion, you're a number 2. Tell me, what's the number 1 thing that you'd like to get better at when it comes to virtual presentations? So now I used, and is it Letty? Letty, maybe?
Letty.
I hope I'm saying it
I
right.
would assume so, yeah. That's what I said. Hopefully I was right.
Yeah. So like, what are you doing, right? Or what are you looking to improve, right? And so we're using names of people in the audience to create that. And I think that's really important. And then I don't love this one, but I like in the beginning, before you go live, a lot of people say, put in where you're from, right?
Oh, yeah.
I don't love that, but I would say something that's relevant. So maybe I would put something out into the world around, so as people are coming in, so, who's your number 1 podcaster? What's the number 1 podcast you listen to? Like something that's more relevant than where are you from? I will sometimes say, hey, put your LinkedIn URL in the chat so you guys can network and connect with each other. So I think like those are some things that we can do to build rapport.
Yeah, it's another really good one. Obviously, if you are on a straight sales call with just one other person, you wouldn't do that necessarily. But in those more webinar and group meeting types of situations, obviously, you can go ahead and do that effectively. Stan, what do you have any thoughts?
You all covered it. I was going to talk about names. The only other one, which is kind of cheating, but if you know who's going to be on in advance, you can send them a LinkedIn invitation, say, hey, looking forward to connecting on this upcoming meeting. But that's not going to happen in most instances, but take advantage of it when it does.
I love that. You're building rapport before.
Yeah, I don't know how that's cheating because it's a great idea. So we just won't call it cheating. How does that sound?
No, it's perfect.
So where we are, question number 3 is kind of like number 2. Let's see if we can get some additional ideas out of it. What are some techniques to make virtual presentations more interactive? And I've already kind of gone through polls and surveys. Brynne did the numbers thing. One thing that I would add would be, at least in Zoom, I think you can do this in other ones, other platforms, that you can actually put in, what do they call them? Reactions, Brynne?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can put in reaction. One is like a thumbs up, one's like a heart, one is like applause or something like that. You can encourage that type of thing throughout as well to just kind of gauge where people are and how they're feeling about whatever it is you're talking about throughout the presentation.
So I love that. I'm going to do two quick things. One is every Friday, I'm part of the C-Suite network, relatively newly in the last few months, but they do celebrates where everybody gets on in a networking call and you do breakouts and they do like what is a need that you have, what is a gift that you have, like it's very interactive. But what I love is, and this is a visual thing, so for those of you listening to the podcast, when someone says something that is that you're encouraging or you're happy for them or they're celebrating a win, everyone lifts up their hands and they wave them back and forth. Like it's like a visual clap.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really cool because even if I'm distracted and I start to see this, I lean in, right? Because everyone is engaging. So if you're on the podcast, it's just a very visual, hands up, flapping back and forth, not, but, it's very, very visual and it's very engaging. The last thing that I'm going to say, because we talked about all those things like the polls in the breakout rooms, I would say, because what I just did earlier was a close-ended question. Put in a 1, put in a 2, put in a 3. A really good way to get engagement is an open-ended question. So maybe I put out, what's your big win this week? What's your big ask this week? Right? Whatever that might be. And then people get an opportunity to talk. Now, that's not a sales call, but it might be, in a presentation when you're waiting to start something, or even if it is like a sales call, but you've got 4 or 5 people and you're waiting for folks to come in, you can, in our case, whatever it is, what's one of the big wins you had this week, right? Like get them excited and talking about the positive stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's my thought.
Does Stan have thoughts?
Not anything to add to this one. I have a couple things on the ones that we're coming to.
Great. So then I'll be last in the future ones.
Sounds good. So the next one is, how important is body language in virtual presentations? We've talked about this a little bit already, just in terms of being a little, maybe a little more animated than what you might be. I don't want to say put an act on necessarily, because when people think about that, they're like, oh my God, I gotta I've got to emote like I'm on an off Broadway type of show or something like that. You don't need to do that type of stuff, but just be a little bit more emotive, and trust me, it will come through. And the side benefit from that is, when you start purposely doing that, after a while, it'll just become more of a habit, and then you won't really have to think about it anymore. Because I've been doing this for like years now, and my wife always says upstairs, because I'm in the basement, she's like, I could tell you were on a call because you were a little more animated, and I could hear your hands going and everything else. And I'm like, yeah, that's true.
That's good.
That's true. So obviously don't overdo it, but just show that you're engaged. I'm going to add just one other quick thing, which is a bit more techie: your camera framing. And this is something I see a lot of that's done wrong. So make every effort possible to make sure that your camera is positioned at eye level, so that your face is clearly visible and that you're also talking straight on to the camera. So, because that develops trust and rapport. Because unless you're standing at a networking event and you're really tall and the other person's really short, you can't really avoid that. But you really want to be at eye level as much as absolutely possible. And that's where camera framing comes in. Now, if you're like me, I've got my notebook actually up on a very adjustable stand, and I've got things adjusted so that my camera is actually like directly on with my eyes. I can go like that if you're with us live or you're watching on video right now. And the other added benefit is that if you're straight on, you don't get like double chins and things like that.
That's a big benefit for me.
Stan.
Yeah, that was great. I was going to mention what you all talked about, which is framing. And also, if you're too close to the camera, and as Bob, you mentioned, you're being emotive, people can't see your hands, or they'll see like the tops of your fingers. So if you're centered in the frame, they can see a little bit more of you. And the energy part, as Bob was talking about, when you add energy, it's good for your audience. It's also good for you because it gives you more energy. And we talked about this being interactive. People feed off your energy, even on camera. So when you're adding energy, people pick up on that. They're a little bit less likely to multitask because you're more interesting to listen to. So there are just a couple things that come to mind.
Love that. Love it. Love it. All right, let's keep moving because we have a few more.
Yeah, we've got a couple more here. So now let's talk a little bit about some common mistakes that presenters make during visual. Well, they are visual, but we're talking specifically about virtual presentations. I get those words mixed up like all of the time, basically. So, Stan, why don't you give us a mistake that you see a lot?
If someone's using PowerPoint, now I realize this is the visual aids part of it, but slides that are text heavy. So you've got bullets, and the other big mistake is reading what is on the slides.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's easy to do if you don't know any different.
Yep.
So much better to use images and talk about them than read to your audience. So that's one of the biggest mistakes I see.
Yeah, and actually that will help people not only in virtual presentations, but in real live presentations as well. That's something that kind of translates between both worlds, essentially.
Yep.
How about you, Bob? What are some mistakes you're seeing?
Yeah, so this one is probably not as big for a lot of people, but there are still people out there who just don't know how to use this stuff. So not practicing with the technology, I think, is big. So yeah, so I mean, not knowing how to use whatever platform that you're on can be really awkward because it leads to those awkward pauses. And notice how I awkwardly paused there. No, because that's exactly what happens if you're like trying to fiddle around with stuff and someone thinks that it's okay to talk. I mean, obviously I did that on purpose, but that really makes things even more awkward, just like it was right now. So, I mean, pauses, delays, or, even technical mishaps.
Well,
So
the irony is we started today with a technical glitch.
Yes, we did. And
maybe we could say it was an example for everyone to see.
Right. Yeah. Although the people on replay won't see that. But yeah, but still.
Don't tell them.
Yeah, don't tell them.
Don't tell the podcast listeners about our technical. Yeah, I'm gonna yes and that preparation, and I'm gonna build on both what Stan said and what you said, which is practice, practice, practice. Right? Don't show up and like random acts of presentation. Right?
Yep.
Go through it with your team. When I started this company 11 and a half years ago, I spent more time in the mirror than anywhere else. I know that sounds so egotistical, but it wasn't. I never like taught, I did training, but never like I did, for social sales link. And so I would look at my hands. I know I overuse my hands. I have a bad habit, which I know I have, and I watch it, which is I'm always scratching my head, even if it's not itchy. It's like a weird habit. So like I try to be aware of that, but I am sure I still do it. But when you practice, and now you can practice on Zoom and watch yourself back, which can be very painful.
Yeah.
But it's a great way to learn. Okay, that's all. Next one.
How can presenters effectively use visual aids in a virtual presentation? So we kind of, and that's visual and virtual in the same sentence. I got it right. But this is really important. Kind of goes off of a question before, but now let's dive into things a little bit more. I'm going to start it off with a really short one, and that's use multimedia to break the monotony. And that's short video clips or screen shares, which we kind of do screen shares. I mean, sometimes we do them more than others, depending on the circumstance. If we're in training, obviously we do a lot of screen shares, but for like more general ones, just keep in mind that if you're on a screen share for too long, you might lose people unless you're really addressing it. Short video clips will always break the monotony. Just make sure that they're short, TikTok length short or whatever, unless you're like really explaining something. Yeah, if it's extremely relevant or whatever. But and it's just like Brynne said, just ensure that whatever you share is directly relevant to whatever message it is that you are providing.
Yep.
That's great. Everything else I think Stan covered in that question, right?
It's funny, Bob go ahead, Bob, because I was about to say something and it looks
no. Go ahead and say something.
Yeah. Simple visual aid. I'm about to make 3 points. Number 1, number 2, number 3. You can use your hands to help you.
I thought you were going to give us 3, but that was the example.
That was the example. Yep.
What are they? What are the 3?
What are the 3? Yep.
That was great.
Yeah. Yeah. So the point being, and the people on the podcast, what I'm doing is when I say I'm going to put 3 points, I put up 3 fingers so people can see them.
Yeah.
And then so that's tell them what you're going to tell them, tell them what you told them.
Yep.
That's an example of 3 points.
Yep. So that was excellent. That was excellent. I've got one more really, really, really fast one, I promise. And I don't see this a lot anymore, which is good. So I think that people are finally picking up on this, using animation and transitions sparingly, because once upon a time when PowerPoint came out, my God, there was stuff flying on and off the screen and everything else. I mean, it seemed like Star Wars, I think when it first started. You can use them thoughtfully and sparingly, because you want to emphasize key points without overwhelming the audience and thinking that they're at a Steven Spielberg film.
So can I share just really quickly? I know we're like over time, but this is such a good point. When I was at Sales 3.0 in Vegas, there were some amazing presentations. And I tend to take pictures of the presentations, and then I might share them on social or whatever, right? Yep. So when you have 3 points for a slide and you're clicking for each point, I'm waiting to take the picture of the whole slide and I'm missing half of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So in those opportunities, I would prefer to see the whole slide at once, unless there's a quiz, like answer this and then you have the answer. But, I really prefer to see the whole slide. If you want there to be kind of building up to it, do it ... so I know that the answer is going to be on the next slide. But that's my preference.
There's something else that I just saw very recently that I thought was highly effective as well. And the person who gave the presentation said it up front. They said, now I'm going to be showing you some slides and there's going to be points going through. At the end of everything that's been presented in the slide, you will see something that says take screenshot now.
I love that.
Wow.
So if you're going to do that, wait for that.
Yeah. And then just warn people ahead of time that, wait to take the screenshot until you see take screenshot now. I thought it was Absolutely
That is-
brilliant.
To transition with the last point. I love that. I never heard of that. That was like
That
a new mic
is-
drop moment.
Yeah, actually, and what final piece of advice would you give to someone looking to master visual presentations? That's mine. So you guys go.
Well, no, I mean, look, I think we end there because that's brilliant.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
That's
No, that
awesome.
sounds great.
I think that's brilliant, and I'm going to do it at Outbound.
Yeah. Good. Good. Yeah, absolutely. So virtual presentations are a way of life now for us in sales and marketing. With our tips today, you now have what you need to go forth and crush those presentations the way that they need to be crushed. So thanks again for joining us for this episode of Making Sales Social Live. If you're with us live on LinkedIn or any other social network, we do this sucker every week. So keep an eye out for our live sessions. If you're listening to us on our podcast and you haven't subscribed already, why not? Please do so. We'd appreciate it. And you can also access all of our previous shows and be alerted when new ones drop when you do that. More info on our podcast is available at socialsaleslink.com/podcast. We do 2 shows weekly, this one and our Making Sales Social interview series, where we talk with leaders and experts in sales, marketing, business, and many more areas. And I don't know about you guys, but I've got a couple of interviews coming up in the next couple of weeks that I'm really excited about. So definitely,
that were amazing.
Yeah, definitely check that out as well. So when you are out and about, be sure to make your sales
social. We're so bad
Excellent.
at this. We'll get it one of these days. Bye, guys.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Don't miss an episode. Visit socialsaleslink.com/podcast. Leave a review down below. Tell us what you think, what you learned, and what you want to hear from us next. Register for free resources at linkedinlibrary.com. You can also listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and Google Play. Visit our website, socialsaleslink.com, for more information.